Our podcast originated from two inquisitive women in their 60s, walking around in New York City and talking and listening to the seniors who offered us generous, interesting, and inspiring life stories. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us at my podcast. This is your host, Yuko Yamamoto. I have a very special guest. His name is
Howard Meltzer.
Yes. Howard and we met. I say we because it was just not me, my husband too. And we attended this seminar with dinner. And he was so interesting that we couldn't listen to the seminar, but we only spoke with him the entire time. So I had to ask him to join my podcast.
Well, it's my pleasure being here, and I'm happy that we made the connection at the seminar.
Yes. Thank you so much for coming. I know you're very busy. You had interviews already at the Bryant Park?
No. Bryant Park, I was there last week. I had a luncheon with a bunch of people who were showcasing an investment, and they had a number of people from venture capital and private equity, and I was invited as well. And, they were interested in hearing my perspective as being someone that's maybe not 30 years old, but who's a little bit older and seasoned and has more experience in terms of evaluating. No, it was a lunch, and it was about 8 people.
I see.
So.
Wow.
But I have been interviewed before when I was in the corporate world. I remember being interviewed, and I remember that I'd be asked a question, and before I was even able to answer, they were already asking the next question. And I learned, okay, I have to be different if I'm going to be thinking and then sharing my response. I want to make sure that I'm doing it very timely and making it worthwhile, from my perspective.
I see. I want to hear the story from your perspective.
Okay, which story is that? Because I have many stories. So
you have too many stories.
Yeah.
Because I was reading your LinkedIn profile, and I was reading it aloud so that my husband can hear. And he says, "What is his profile? It's so overwhelming."
Yeah. Well, thank you. It's very kind. As I just shared before, I was born and raised in New York City, and
Queens.
I grew up in Queens. Went to school at Long Island University. I graduated. I then had jobs in the financial area, and ended up doing some master's work at St. John's University. And I was offered a position at the company I was working with. I was working with Reuters news organization, not on the news side, but on the business side. And I was asked if I wanted to go to Buenos Aires very early on in my career there. And I said, I don't really think so. As a New Yorker, a lot of Spanish speaking people here, and I didn't speak any Spanish then. Now I know a few words. But I thought it's probably not a good thing for me. It was just a bit daunting to kind of consider going down to Buenos Aires. And we're talking about.
You didn't go, or you?
No, I didn't go. This is mid-'70s. I declined. I said, it's probably my end of my career because they'll never ask again. And luckily, and 6 months later, they said, would you like to go to London, England? And I said, they speak English there pretty well, so I think maybe I'll go. And I went, and it was a wonderful experience because here I was in my mid-20s. We're talking about the mid-'70s. You were probably a very young girl at that time. And I ended up there for 2 years. And it was a great experience because what it did was it showed that I can be individualistic. I can be independent. You learn that you can adapt to things, situations. You learn how to be resourceful. And again, it's just me. I didn't know anyone there. I had a job, which was great.
Did you stay as an expat?
Yeah, I was there as an expat on a visa, and but it gave me, it really kind of like, I was able to kind of see things about myself that I didn't realize previously because there was no family there. There were no friends. There was no one that I knew other than this company and this business. So after 2 years, they asked if I wanted to, well, they didn't even ask. They said, we have an opportunity for you to move to Hong Kong.
Oh.
And I thought in my lifetime I had never envisioned living in the Orient. I thought this would be very disorienting for me.
No.
But I accepted the position, and originally they said it would be a 6-month stint, and I ended up being there for 2 years. And again, it was a great experience, something that I would never have imagined. And it gives me a lot more perspective having lived in a total of 4 different countries. Because after Hong Kong, I ended up in Toronto, Canada. And then after Toronto, Canada, I was in Chicago, back in the U.S. So I was out of the country for about 15 years.
Right.
And I miss things happening here, friends, family, a lot of my, earlier life experiences. And
you finally came back to New York.
I finally came back to New York. I was recruited for a position here, moved with family, and it was a perfect time.
Did you meet your spouse while you were outside the country?
I did, yes. I met my spouse in 1980 in Toronto, Canada.
I see.
And it was a funny story because I had friends in Hong Kong it was a family, and I knew the sons, but the parents had said that, oh, by the way, you're going to Toronto. My sister lives in Toronto, and you should contact her, and I'm sure she'd like to have you over for dinner. So I went over for dinner one night, and they said, how's your social life? And I had only been in Toronto for maybe 2 months. And I said, it's not bad. It seems like a nice place. And they said, well, we have many friends who have daughters, and if you'd like, we'll introduce you. And I said, great. So they gave me a list of 7 names.
Daughters.
Of daughters of their friends. And I contacted every one of them. Some of them didn't live in the country. Some of them were already married. Some of them were in relationships. And one of them happened to be the one that I ended up marrying. So we met in March, and we were married in November, same year.
Very quick.
It was very quick. Yeah, I think part of it was just my own knowing that I wanted to kind of settle down. Traveling around as a solo pilot around the world is a lot of fun, but I thought it's nice to have a base.
Right.
It's nice to have roots. It's nice to be amongst family and build from that.
You met the right person at the right time.
I did, yes.
See. And you are happily married for 34 years?
I was happily married for 34 years. My life was a kind of a different type of marriage than most. I think I'd mentioned to you at the dinner that when my wife was pregnant, 9 months pregnant, she was just before the due date. She was diagnosed with leukemia, and this is in 1983. 1983, I didn't really know much about how to treat people. I used to see kids in the hospital, next door, 15 years old, really happy, jolly people, and 10 days later they died. And the interesting thing is that my wife lived for 32 years after diagnoses, which is a many, many miracles.
I believe
and
so.
An amazing story, which one day, whether I do it in a podcast or whether I write a book, as I promised my mother-in-law, but it was a marriage filled with a lot of love. And so I think that, there are 2 very distinct advantages that I had in life, which was one, being able to travel around the world, getting a different perspective, not being in the same city, living in the same house, in the same neighborhood all my life, but really living in different places and understanding the diversity of people and culture and history and things like that, and also being in a marriage that had lots of challenge to it because of health issues, but lots of love.
Because after diagnosis of leukemia, your wife must have been either lucky or very strong, or because at those times we couldn't fight leukemia the way we do today.
That's correct. Yeah. No, I think she had a very different perspective on life from the get-go. Fortunately, she was never like depressed. People always say, you know, what type of therapy were you in during this time? And I said, no therapy. You know, just kind of just did whatever was necessary to do to kind of move
her
on.
mindset
Yeah,
itself.
her mindset was very good. I remember her asking the doctors there when they told her about her situation. You have to remember, I mean, you're a mother. This is the next day they had delivered our daughter. Our daughter was born the next day, cesarean section, so they could actually begin treating my wife. And she asked the doctors, what chance do I have of living? And the doctor said, you have a 5% chance. And she said to them, I'll take it. So that's an example of her, you know, positivity.
Right.
Somebody would have said, okay, 5%, let's just pack up and just go on a nice trip and, you know, my life is finished and you'll have to figure out what you'll do for your life. But it was a different, you know, we had a child, a newborn baby.
Right. That's the daughter who
Our daughter, yes.
asked for the copy of this podcast. Right?
Yeah, of course, yeah. Although she's
in Chicago?
My daughter's in Chicago, yep. She is a pediatric hospitalist. She works at Rush University Medical Center. She runs the hospitalist program for pediatrics.
Wow.
And she has 2 little kids of her own, my grandkids, who I adore and who adore me as well.
So they call you...
They call me Pop-Pop.
Oh, Pop-Pop.
Yeah, from the beginning, Pop-Pop, yes.
2 granddaughters?
No, I had one granddaughter who's going to turn 10 next month, and a grandson that just turned 7 this month.
I see. Very nice.
So it just shows you that, you know, life has many ups and downs and challenges, and life is all about going ahead, going forward. A lot of times I meet people and I see that they're stuck. You know, they're living in the past. They can't get over something that has occurred in their life. And, you know, in some ways I feel, you know, fortunate. And I think a lot of it has to do with when you put all your heart and soul and all your dedication and commitment into something, you tend to be feeling that you have absolutely no regrets. You did everything that you could for whatever situation it was.
I see.
And therefore, you know, you feel that you're okay moving ahead.
I was thinking of some questions, which I sent you this morning, but I think one of this you don't have an answer. What is your biggest failure?
My biggest failure, probably not playing golf very well. I've been playing golf since I'm 13 years of age, and I just, you know, I enjoy playing. It's nice to be outside and in the green, you know, pasture and everything else like that. But I was always very athletic. I was always into all team sports.
Yes.
And for some reason, I just never really progressed the way I would have thought I could progress as an athlete. And golf, you know, I see people of all shapes and sizes. Some people with one arm, some people that are blind, and they hit great golf balls.
Right.
And I just find that I'm like a failure in golf.
No.
But I still play.
But you still play.
I still
and do
play,
you enjoy playing golf?
Yeah, I do. You know, I think if I played better, I would enjoy it more. But I wouldn't become possessed the way a lot of golfers are, you know, where they're just
do you think
totally consumed with...
You don't like the competitiveness of it?
You know, I think it's more of to me, it's more of a social thing.
Yes.
You know, there's certain challenges. Do you play golf?
No.
Okay, no, but there's certain, you know, there's social aspects to it. I like, you know, being out in the park. I prefer to walk than to ride in a cart. Right. And on a day like today, it's probably a great day to play golf.
Yes. But do you jog? Or?
Yeah, I mean, this morning I did a bike ride along the Hudson River, and I do yoga a number of times a week. I do Pilates. I've always been very active. I used to run for 35 years, almost just about every day.
Right.
And I find that, you know, exercise for me is very much part of my DNA
Right.
because what it does is it allows me to feel, vibrant, awake, energized. Your mind becomes very sharp.
I see.
Dealing with a lot of adversity and challenges, by running, you're able to kind of think through issues and problems. If I had to, make a presentation or a speech or write something, it would give me the ability to be able to think through a lot of those things. And with running, you get this endorphin high. I don't necessarily get it from some of the other activities, but I still keep, very active for who I am.
Wow. Maybe it clears your mind when you're jogging or running.
Yeah, I think it clears your mind. In some ways, it's almost like a meditative thing.
I see.
Because it takes you away from something that you're doing, but it also allows you to kind of like think through certain things that are, staring you in the face.
So can you tell me your morning routine?
My morning?
Yeah.
I usually wake up, 5:36. I'd probably like to sleep more. I don't go to sleep till maybe 11 at night. I always hear people saying, you need, at least 7, maybe 8 hours sleep. But
Do you
I'm
get that?
always early riser. I think as soon as I see there's light outside, I wake up. And I usually make a, 2 large cappuccino cup, and I put my sneakers on, and I'm doing one of those activities that we just talked about, whether it's hiking, walking, biking, yoga, Pilates. I swim, I do golf, and in the wintertime I ski.
You ski too.
I ski too, yeah. I like to, a lot of people, I at this stage of life, a lot of people my age I know like to go down to Florida and sit in the sun and, go for dinners at 4:30. And I'm just not, ready for that. That's not me. It's not my personality. I'm too much, too much energy, and I enjoy skiing because, you spend 5-6 hours a day on the mountain exercising.
And fresh air.
Fresh air, yep.
Right. Were you that kind of child? When you were smaller, you were always athletic, going out?
Yes, yeah. When I was younger, what I really loved doing was team sports. With my friends, we'd play in the park, we'd play in the schoolyard,
Like
basketball, baseball, football, even hockey as well. We played street hockey. And when I moved to England, I didn't have that same connection with a bunch of people.
Your
So
friends.
I ended up starting to play squash. And I was swimming, and I was running, and I would be meeting people through that, and that was, a new kind of, way to socialize.
I see. What is the best compliment that you received?
Best compliment that I received, I think a good friend of mine had who recently passed away a few years ago. Had said to me after my wife had passed that, you're like a saint. You've been a saint all these years. You've been so committed and dedicated to your wife. Your life has been on hold. It's now Howie time. Howie time, and that's my name. He
I
said,
saw that in LinkedIn.
Yeah, he said it's now Howie time. So at first I thought, people are going to think, oh, I'm a very selfish guy. I'm thinking of myself, but without really knowing who I am, where I'm coming from, until you kind of like peel the onion open, you don't know. But he knew me. Again, we were childhood friends, very close. And he had said to me that, it's now time to live your life. It's now Howie time. And it stuck with me, and it became like the theme for my life the last number of years.
So what do people misunderstand about you the most?
I think it could be, related to what I just said, which is that, people don't really know who you are until, you look at someone's LinkedIn profile, although, that could be, it could be real or that could be false. These days you don't know what's right or what's not. And it's really through, conversation and spending time with people do you really kind of get a sense as to what people, understand. So I think it's really people not having an understanding as opposed to a misunderstanding.
Because you have the executive image based on the bio, based on how you project yourself. But I think you have a heart of gold. And it doesn't show through because of your corporate image.
Yeah, no, I think having presence is very helpful. It's interesting because through life you have different identities. When you're growing up, you're hanging out with your friends, and you're an athlete and playing on different teams. And then when you're working, you become like a corporate guy. And then being home as a caretaker for a number of years, that was my identity. And now I have a new identity, which is it's now Howie time, and I'm able to really tap into all those different experiences and resources and tools that I have in my toolkit from the life that I've lived to this time.
Toolkit. You have multiple toolkits.
Yeah, multiple toolkits, and I find it's helpful because I like to help people. I meet people that some I know, family members. They're asking me for advice, whether it's financial issues, whether it's health issues, whether it's social issues. I'm always, willing to listen. I think, I have a pretty logical mind, very rational, and I like helping people. To me, it just has a natural feeling to it.
I see. So staying connected with the community or socially.
Yeah. I mean, I sometimes, feel that I'd like to be more involved with doing volunteer type work, and because of I travel a lot, and I'm traveling to see friends and family and to do things that I was not able to do for a number of years, being home. So it's hard to really commit to something where they want you for every Thursday for the next 3 years.
I see.
It's hard to really commit to those things, but I try to do periodically get involved with certain things that are helpful.
Do you still travel internationally?
Yeah, I do. In fact, I was in your home country the last trip. I was planning to go to Israel in October of last year, and everything was all set, and then all of a sudden the horrific events of October 7th occurred.
Right.
And I thought, this is no way. I mean, seeing what had happened, there's always been incidents in Israel that, I think scare people. And I've been there a number of times. I was, in fact, in Israel on my honeymoon in 1981. We went for 3 weeks. But I realized that it's probably not going to be a trip that I can take. And I quickly said, okay, where can I go that's a friendly place, it's a peaceful place? And I said, I'm going to go to Japan. I've been there before. I have friends there. I wanted to go and maybe see parts of Japan that I had not been to before. And I did that as part of my trip, and it was great. But
you have been to many places in Japan.
Not as many as I'd like. There's many more that I'd like to go to. I still want to go to Niseko to ski.
That's Hokkaido.
Hokkaido, yeah. People say go to Kishu. People say go Okinawa. Maybe I go to Okinawa when I'm 100 years old with all the other Okinawans that are 100-year-olds.
Extend your longevity. They have great water, that's why they say.
The water?
Yeah, because they sit on the coral,
Coral, okay.
Yeah, so the water is exceptionally good in Okinawa.
Yeah, I remember once here in New York, I went to an event that was sponsored by the Japanese consulate, and they were introducing different businesses from Japan who were here. It was really about passing the baton from older people to younger people and their family. And as you know, in Japan, like the average age of fishermen now is like 75. So when they pass on, nobody is really saying, "Oh, I want to become a fisherman in Japan." Same thing is that people that own farms and people that own, whether it's tea farms or whether it's dairy farms. So they had all these different businesses come. There was a dairy farm family, for many generations. There was a tea farm family that had existed for over 1,000 years. And they brought their special tea for us to try.
Wow.
And they brought water from Japan, special water to make the tea.
Soft water.
Yeah, to make the tea, which was really, unique.
It tasted better?
I'm not really, to me, it's, I probably drank it too fast to say, I didn't really savor it to say this is, as they say in Japan, this is sugoi.
Sugoi. 美味しい. Yeah, it's very hard to give the baton to the next generation because we lived in a very different way in the past, like Showa era, with the last 2 emperors ago. Our world changed drastically, so it's not like traditional family business. You hand on to your firstborn son.
Right.
We don't have that anymore.
Yeah, no, I think, I follow developments in lots of different parts of the world as part of what I do now.
Right.
And, what I've learned about Japan, interestingly, is that it's shrinking.
Yes.
It's amazing.
Population is shrinking.
The small little island, used to be the second most prosperous country in the world.
Right.
China has surpassed it recently.
Yes.
But Japan continues, with their innovation and brains to, develop and create, which I find is, quite amazing. But the population now, which is maybe 120 million people, is going to go down to maybe 90 million people in the next 20, 30 years because it's an older population.
Right.
And what the government is now doing is they're now bringing in many immigrants from Philippines, from Vietnam, to do a lot of the work that a lot of the Japanese perhaps are not interested in doing, which is interesting because there is also socio-economic issues and also more specifically social issues where a lot of people are not having relationships and not getting married.
Yeah, we are not getting married.
And not having children, which is also contributing to
the shrinking
shrinkage.
of the population, yes.
But I think they'll be fine.
I hope so. What makes you so hopeful?
I think being an optimistic person, and it doesn't seem like they're on a downward spiral.
So based on your observation of that.
Yeah, knowing people from that part of the world, and again, there are certain parts of the world that I'm not maybe as hopeful for, and there are other parts of the world that are just now beginning to bloom and develop and become a world force. You look at what's happening in India, for instance.
Do you visit India also?
I've never been to India.
Pakistan.
Never been to Pakistan. I've been to quite a number of countries. When I lived in Asia, I traveled all through Asia.
What about Thailand?
But not Thailand. My last trip besides Japan was I did a bike tour across Vietnam. So I bicycled across Vietnam from Đài Lạt to Hoi An.
How long in terms of distance?
It was a 1-week trip, and it was great. I loved it, and I would love to do another bike tour. I'm constantly looking and thinking.
Did you do it as a group?
Yeah, this was a tour. It was organized in Vietnam. I joined. There was only 6 people. I was one of the 6 that came on my own. And my plan was that I would go bike for a week, and which was great experience. Every day you're in a different city.
Right.
You did maybe 40, 50 kilometers biking. And then New Year's Eve, I ended up flying into Osaka. So I spent New Year's in Osaka. I experienced the whole Shinto shrine experience. Went to the Osaka Castle.
Yes.
Went to Rima Spa, the 1,300-year-old spa in Rima. And then I went to Tokyo and visited friends. So it was a fabulous trip.
The New Year's time in Japan, お正月 time,
yes,
is the the most secret, like sacred time of Japanese culture. We take break. Everyone takes break for the first 3